Hello and welcome to my session on music in the home. So basically what I'm going to be covering with you today is so the recent research in the areas of technology, play, the brain and parent-child attachment. So with regards to early childhood music education. So firstly, here's a little bit about me. I'm a mum of two, so I've got a dual role as a parent and an experienced music teacher. I'm a teacher of from early childhood all the way through to adults throughout, the various abilities and skill levels. Through my work with adults and with children, my conversations with parents have mainly revolved around the regrets and the enjoyment of learning about music, but the regrets of maybe not having done it themselves. Very rarely do I hear them talk about, in terms of the music in their home and the benefits of music for them. And I do have conversations with regards to music being something you either have or you don't. So in terms of the benefits for music for young children, most people that I speak to or parents that I speak to are aware of some of the benefits of music education. They know that music is good for their children's brains, and they just don't know how to necessarily go about what practically that looks like in their home environment with regards to preschool music in the home. Less so also on the sheer enjoyment, like music as a benefit of sharing music with your children in your own home or with preschool children. There's this enjoyment of the music itself and the connection that you feel through these experiences, through musical experiences, but then also that pervasive notion that music is something that is a talent that either you have or you haven't got. And if you don't have it, it's not capable of being developed. So that's sort of what led me to then question what's happening in the home and why. Are parents perhaps outsourcing this particular responsibility in terms of making music in their home to people that they feel are more qualified than themselves? So in terms of the beliefs of parents, will obviously influence their actions. And music education is, in terms of thinking of it more than just learning an instrument, and in terms of what it looks like for not learning an instrument and developing the foundational learning skills and the learning stages. We want to do lots of singing, lots of movement, and connecting children to that expressive sort of qualities of music through the moving and the doing and the performing of music. However, in terms of that belief that music education is just learning the instrument, and you obviously that would influence what they do in their home. Also outsourcing responsibility to music experts or specialists, and possibly also electronic sources. But in terms of thinking of music in the home, I advocate for it being just as much of a home activity as shared book reading would be. And so this shift in terms of what parents are actually believing right now, in terms of the accessibility of music, in terms of it being a home activity as well. That's something that sort of prompted me to study and do a further PhD on this. So that's the process currently, is working on the PhD. So I'm going to go straight to this one. So the first, the background from today is that kids will basically assemble their identities in a global marketplace on the basis of what their local culture predisposes them to make. And they make individual choices that are reinforced by this market logic. So globalization is sort of viewed as an ongoing historical process that has many facets, that some will be positive, some will be negative, but is driven and dominated by mainly multinational corporations that have a link to a more globalized world. So globalization has an influence then, if we think of the background of music in the home, the background on child, like the influence it has on childhood, in terms of there's more migration of families, as well as the shifts in perhaps the familial structure. parents working at different hours or doing travel or those sorts of things. Maybe they move around for their jobs, etc. And there's also a global standardization of schooling and instruction, as well as what children should be achieving and when. And we actually know that the norms that are set by Western nations with regards to what children should be up to and when are actually set by where only a quarter of that population of children or adolescent population lives. So Gilin and Chumachenko in 2004 actually found that Western nations set the norms for what childhood and appropriate development compromises of, even though this is only where a quarter of the world's child and adolescent population lives. So something to consider as well. In terms of technology, Westernization and Americanization has impacted children around the world. So children actually across the world are increasingly engaged in a global music culture. Migration and this global music culture will blur some national borders, and the media connects the world by creating sort of this global village that we have all got access to, and children at a younger age now have access to themselves. However, it is still found that musical childhoods are still localized. So there is still that element of the local community and local culture having an impact rather than it all being globalized. So children's songs are influenced by the environment, their own experiences, the musical traditions and genres they encounter, the meaning the music has for them individually, and in that sort of local aspect as well. So in terms of the advances in technology, screen time for the children under the age of 2, it is advisable that no more than 1 hour per day. But despite this, more children are exposed to more than that, and some much more than that. Also, the impact of digital technology in terms of disrupting family patterns of interaction. Television has been found to disrupt that, so TV, not to mention the impact of too much screen time on cognitive and social development of children, which is also prolific in the research at the moment. But rather than assume all negative impacts on digital technology on childhood, there may be some positive ones too. Maybe increased autonomy, dexterity, another tool for children to be able to use. So in terms of thinking of childhood in the realm of technology, we want to make sure that we are not assuming it's all bad, but let's try and paint the picture as to what children are exposed to or using these days, and how this may inform what's going on in terms of the home. And then in terms of electronic readers and toys, a lot of parent attitudes towards electronic toys shows that they actually believe more that if it's an electronic toy, it'll accelerate their child's learning. However, in a study that was by Parish Morris et al. In 2013, they found that the parent-child relationship or conversations that were happening with the children who had the electronic reader, as opposed to the children who didn't have the electronic reader, they had just a book. The conversations were quite different. More conversation was about the technology and the buttons to push, etc., with the presence of the electronic reader, rather than prompting questions that expanded the story, and that dialogic sort of reading and story comprehension, that if you're reading a book together, you're more likely to sort of do that. So that's they found that conversations around that in terms of the use of the electronic reader as opposed to a book. And also we know that popular music is important, obviously in the lives of us, but also of the lives of children. We're massive consumers of music at the moment, probably more so than any time before. So listening to popular music within the home, Davis actually found in 2016 in a paper that the listening to popular music was a regular activity for most families. And children of increasing younger ages are actually able to navigate and make their own musical preferences on phones and tablets, younger and younger and younger. So also found in 2006, Bosaki et al. Found that popular music listening accompanied many pleasurable activities within the home, and later children enjoy sharing and being involved in their parents' music when they thought about back on their childhood. So when gaming and video, in terms of gaming, we talk sort of video gaming, has become a peer-oriented activity. Talking about music and movies is also sort of that peer-oriented activity, which can, as children get into adolescence, influence then the family patterns after that. However, if you've had these experiences as a child of being connected through music in that way, perhaps that's some sort of impact as well. So obviously, I don't know if you've heard of Paw Patrol. You may or you may have not. They're quite a popular cartoon show where the dogs save or rescue and help a town out when things are in trouble, or people are having trouble. So in terms of the tune, you might know it. Paw Patrol will be there on the double. There's a link to, there's a tune of that one. But basically using that, let's not get sidetracked by the tune. So for many young children, popular music is heard as a soundtrack to their favorite TV show and cartoon. And unlike the fleeting sounds of many popular tunes, television shows actually provide theme music that then is heard for years and years, and sources that children can come to then establish longer relationships with artists or that particular music itself. So just to summarize the last few slides, musical identities comprise of global and local elements. So thinking of, in the context of childhood and early childhood, what this looks like currently. Media and digital technology within the home has a significant impact on childhood experiences, as we've gone through, and more is to be known with regards to the impact that media and digital technology has on that valuable and intimate nature of parental singing and musical interactions, or family singing and musical interactions. So if you haven't seen Dr. Anita Collins's video, well, it's an animation on the brain. If you haven't seen that one, I definitely recommend watching the animation. It's sort of an accompaniment to her TED Talk back in 2014, well, for her PhD in 2014. So in terms of that particular brain animation, I recommend you watch that one. The things that I found so far, or in my research about the developing brain on music, is that children actually are endowed with the capacity to understand music naturally. That is a result of, without formal music training. We know this through newborns in terms of Hodges as well. Newborns are already capable of categorizing sound streams, such as separating the sound of their mum's voice from other background noise. And with regards to the brain and how it develops with the plasticity of the brain, neuroplasticity is actually the brain's ability to form and recognize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience, or following some sort of injury. Whereas the neural pruning occurs when neglected synaptic connections are deleted in order to improve the overall functioning of the brain. Thompson et al. Found that 50% of brain tissue can actually be lost between the ages of 7 and 11 within specific regions of the brain due to neural pruning. On the other side of the coin, permanent changes can occur within the brain when people engage with music over long periods of time. In Hallam 2010, but also Dr. Anita Collins's work, finding that a minimum of 2 years music tuition or instruction changed the structures of the brain in that process. Martin in 2012 also states that the developing brains of children respond to and are changed by tonal experiences. So we know that while neural pruning happens, we know that there's also some enhancing of the brain's structures and functions that music can help out with. Music enhances and actually processing and sharpens the brain's early encoding of sound. So some of this learning is actually transferable from one domain to another if it's similar cognitive processes are involved, i.e. distinguishing differences in rhythmic patterns, but also working out phonemic awareness. So rhythm patterns and their symbols, and then phonemic awareness. There's a bit of a similar cognitive process involved. It has also been found that musical activities that emphasize rhythm have a positive effect on phonological and spelling skills, especially with children with dyslexia or who struggle with dyslexia. So more on the developing brain, we spoke about music being a cognitive enabler coined by Martin in 2012. Many have used studies of music and the brain to advocate for the inclusion of music in schools. One pervasive notion is that music enhances achievement in other areas. So music is included in a school because it's good for children's achievement in other areas. The reason for this is that music is a cognitive enabler. It makes your brain work better, and it enhances children's capacity for learning. In terms of the most cited reasons why arts education might enhance achievement, so Martin listed 7 of these in his study. Some cognitive skills that are developed by learning in the arts might be the same that are needed to do well in academic performance. Success in arts enhances self-confidence and self-esteem, which transfers to other subjects. Learning in the arts requires perseverance. Arts performance requires public display of your work, which encourages setting of high standards. Collaboration in the arts help children to develop social skills. Arts education relies on the presence of positive mentors, often in the context of one-on-one, and may facilitate relaxation and stress reduction. So those are some of the reasons why sort of music is included or might be seen to enhance achievement that he found. It involves focused attention, decoding notation, developing and sense of patterns, enhancing memorization, enhancing fine motor dexterity, and learning how emotions are expressed in music. So Dr. Anita Collins's work finding that there are actually identifiable differences in the brain structures and brain functions of musicians and non-musicians was sort of telling of that too. And in terms of summarizing what I've just gone through, researchers and therapists are interested in the processes now that are involved in when a child learns music. We know that it's good. We know that it does great things for the brain. What actually is the brain doing with regards to music, with regards to the brain and the music that when you're singing and when you're making the music yourself? And why are those processes so important, and are they transferable in other areas, or what other areas do we use those same processes? So obviously we also talked about the deletion of neglected synaptic connections, reinforcing the importance of nurturing musical development earlier in life, and that prolonged musical experience has a direct effect on the structure and the functions of the brain. So let's talk about musical play in early childhood. So now we've covered the developing brain, we've covered the background of what children's technology and a globalized world in terms of that context. So let's talk about what play actually looks like, and also musical play. So what does musical play look like in these sort of in the home and with young children? The musical nurturing that a child receives during the early years can have a significant influence on later engagement and success in music. The first experiences need to be rich and diverse and should be naturally just wonderful, to quote Feyerabend in 1997. But in terms of motherese, so we know that the presence of an infant has emotional consequences for the mother in particular, which that in turn actually affects the expressiveness of her spoken or sung communications. So motherese is described by Greenhell in 2018 in a book as a speech that is higher than normal pitch and a sing-songy sort of style, using short phrases and exaggerated, lengthened and repeated words. So that's just a like a definition of what sort of talking motherese in terms of the way you would talk if an infant was present. And this actually comes naturally. Most adults in the presence of an infant will speak this way. not just in terms of the mum, but other adults. So music has always been, well, this does hint that music possibly has always been an integrated part of life in terms of our human life and human existence. It's effective in managing the infant's levels of arousals as well when they're younger, and therefore levels of cortisol. So that appears that also maybe music has a survival sort of function as well. Every culture also has its own dedicated genre of music for infants. We all have play songs and lullabies. So songs to sort of engage and excite and have fun with, and songs to soothe and to calm. Parents and families seem to intuitively provide engaging and enjoyable musical experiences for their children, regardless of having formal training in how to do so. And the proportion of play songs and lullabies, depending on how many of each, differs from nationality to nationality. But regardless, it is strongly, it was shown that mothers appear to play a large part in their child's musical development from an early age. Maternal singing is also warm, full of meaning. I would stretch this to parental singing, or even family singing with a family member with a child. Warm, full of meaning, and often associated with some form of movement. And the strength of this connection affects how we perceive then and remember the music that was sung to us when we were rocked or sung to in that way. So there's actually links between what you heard and what you felt when you heard it at that particular time of your life too. So what does this look like? These are my kids. In my house, it's often spontaneous, naturally connected to what we're talking about or doing. So for example, building blocks or a Lego house. I don't know if you've heard of build it up, build it up, build it high. Build it up, 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 up into the sky. And it goes a bit longer than that. Or if we're on a seesaw, the seesaw up and down in the air and on the ground. Or my kids sing seesaw, Marjorie Daw, Johnny shall have a new master. That sort of version as well. Or spontaneous singing while they're coloring or drawing or doing puzzles or eating, during any kind of mundane routine activities, also when they were babies, such as like changing their nappy or bathing them. And obviously, of course, the ceremonial singing of the happy birthday that happens annually for all of us, with varying versions and levels as well with that one. So in terms of how it looks like in the home, that can vary, but it's often spontaneous, and it's often something that's used by children in a way where their movement is limited, and so if they're drawing or they're doing a puzzle or something, they will then sing at that particular time to use it as something to do while they're doing that. So play forms the core of contemporary early childhood pedagogy, and it's crucial to understand crucial to children's actual cognitive development, especially in helping them solve problems. Natural musical play, children naturally play with music by freely playing with their head voice, creating songs, and they use music to stimulate their brain when movement is restricted. And that was found actually recently by a dean in 2020, a great study on recording children's spontaneous singing. Children respond naturally to rhythms and to lyrics. Playground songs, Marsh completed an ethnomusicology study. It was a bit of a while back now, 1997. Australia comprises of a multinational population, and this paired with the broadening of a children's auditory field, meaning popular music and that in terms of the global music sort of culture, means that songs are actually obtained from a variety of different places. So playground songs, meaning the songs that children naturally just sing in the playground with their friends, are actually more rhythmically complex than the pedagogical songs for any given age group that specialists have as part of their pedagogy. This could be the influence of popular music with regards to the syncopation, the more complicated rhythms and melodies. Often you can find that clapping games are more complex in this way, but whatever the balance of folk music, popular music, creativity, the goal is obviously to sustain the joy of music and musical creativity of the children that they teach, so the early childhood educators or the parents of the children in their care. With regards to early music training programs, little scientific support is around for the long range benefits or non-musical benefits of very early musical training. But despite this, programs for infants and toddlers are increasing in popularity. But the research does show that a very supportive early home environment is crucial for optimizing this musical achievement. Perhaps the music program popularity is due to that outsourcing that I mentioned before. So to summarize these slides, adults have obviously developed a specific way to interact with children without formally having to train anybody to do so. Nurturing musical play versus extinguishing it. So rather, what's the balance of how do we nurture it? How much of an influence does the adult have on the play? How much direction? And playground songs also appearing more rhythmically complex than music education pedagogy actually suggests as well. So lastly, with regards to parent-child attachment, so now that we sort of know what it looks like, with regards to parent-child attachment, musical dispositions in humans presumes that there is a biological basis for music. And this is reflected in the importance of it in cultural transmissions, ceremonies, work, and in the care of children as well. Some music training programs in the early years result in greater communication between parent and child and strengthens their relationship. So in terms of looking more closely at how music impacts attachment according to the literature, the parent's role is crucial in the development of the emotional regulation of children or of the infant, because in that first 4 years of life, the parent acts as the auxiliary ego for the child. And after this, the baby's ego slowly starts to take over to receive and manage its own signals. And Bargill in 2002 actually also suggests that the mother and baby are connected symbiotically, allowing for mutual regulation of their systems. The 4 phases of regulation are perception of danger, process of communication signals, reception of those signals, and then mediation of the danger through defense mechanisms. And with regards to the types of attachment, we've got non-invasive, types of attachment: consistent, inconsistent, and uncertain or ambivalent. And any distress may interrupt or interfere with the functioning of processes. And so environment mediation, when they start to mediate their own signals, can be impaired in children depending on the attachments around them. Music could be used, therefore, as an aid to promote or to help attachment and improve emotion regulation in children. So music within the home, researchers and music therapists are keen to find out more about the connection between music and memory. Music ties to the personal history and experiences of individuals because of its ability to link what we hear to what we feel so strongly, which we mentioned before. And infants are even able to decode the emotion in music and the vocalizations of their parents or caregivers as young as newborns. Humans share this ability with other species, the capacity to extract from the vocalizations of a fellow creature, and that you can extract that information about identity, the emotion behind the message, etc. Songs in childcare. Using songs in childcare is widespread throughout the world and has its roots in ancient and universal oral tradition. So not watching it on a screen like we do now, but actually performing it from one person to the other and sharing it that way. Babies tune into subtle shifts in tempo and volume, and even adults who have not been formally trained in music can easily distinguish a lullaby from a play song and appear to instinctively know when to sing what. Parents singing with their children is often ritualized, meaning these songs are sung over and over again with very little variation. And singing also may even serve as a regulator of alertness by reducing the state of alertness in a baby who's got an elevated level of cortisol or vice versa. And that links into that survival function that we spoke about earlier. Most popular activities that parents are engaging with their children, reported by Will in 2011, are that they are singing, they're dancing, and they're moving to music. 60% of parents in the US, also by Custodero et al. In 2003, found that they reported to singing or playing music to their children daily. And they also found that mothers were more likely to engage musically with their children than fathers. So in terms of parent motivation to participate in the musical activities with their children, they knew that music would help their children be better at maths. And so that's why they were doing it. So Will found out that extra little bit of information from his studies too. So to summarize, music can be used to strengthen the relationship between child and parent, and any distress during the first 4 months of life may interfere with the development and functioning of important emotional regulation processes, and how music can be used as a non-invasive therapy to help in that regard. And also parental singing may have a survival function with regards to the regulating the level of cortisol in infants, but also thinking about language and the possibility that music actually predates language. Could be something that requires a little bit more reading and more research as well. So that's my presentation. So I really hope that you enjoyed that. It is just a snapshot, and I know it seemed like it went really quickly and I was talking a lot. If you have any questions or any you want to get in touch or anything, you can, and I'd love to hear from you. My email here at Edith Cowan University is p.chapman at ecu.edu.au, and I'd love to hear if you had any questions or any extra notes from the thing today, the presentation today. Thank you very much. Bye. Sorry. Here we go. Bye.